Story 1. Last Halloween, something hunted me and my friends. This year, it's coming back. I'm posting this story here as a last-ditch effort to prepare everyone for this year's Halloween. Before you ask, yes, I've already told my parents and the police everything about what happened last Halloween. My parents thought I was losing it, and the cops thought I was playing a bad prank. If only they were there that fateful night. It started out like our last 3 Halloweens at DSU, Digbar State University. Me and my friends Alex and Will, not their real names, I'm not running their privacy, met up in my dorm, decked out in stupid costumes and ready for a fun night of drinking and free candy. Then we formulated our plan. We'd pregame, go trick-or-treating off campus in a nearby neighborhood, and then go clubbing. You're never too old for trick-or-treating, and once you get to college, you learn you're never too buzzed either. At least, that's what we thought when we set off for the neighborhood. Candy buckets in our hands and booze in our systems. Sure, we were smart enough to never drive after drinking, but we weren't smart or sober enough to watch out backs. As we walked across the moonlit DSU campus and towards the nearby neighborhood, something malevolent was watching us. I'm sure it wasn't fun for a tired parent to see 3 college students knock on their door and yell trick or treat as loud as humanly possible. Luckily, all the houses we came across were still seemingly happy to give us candy. By the time we'd completely filled our candy buckets, it was already 10:30. The tall oak trees of the neighborhood blocked any moonlight from reaching us, keeping the whole street dark and gloomy. At that point, it was too dark out and we felt too drunk to walk all the way to the club, so I got us an Uber. The app told me it'd arrive in 15 minutes. Looking to pass the time, me and Alex sat down on the sidewalk and began to gorge on our sugary loot. Will didn't sit down with us. Instead, he stood straight as a plank, looking down the dark road before us. "Will, you good man?" I asked. Will didn't respond. Me and Alex exchanged confused looks. Maybe Will had more to drink than we thought. Alex stood up and lightly pushed Will to get his attention. That's when Will snapped. "Don't, look, I'm sorry, man, but I could have sworn someone was fucking staring at us from behind that tree." He pointed at one of the oaks about 100 feet down the road. Alex, obviously a little shaken, nervously laughed. "Chill the fuck out, man, you're just drunk. We're the only ones out here right now." No sooner did Alex finish his sentence before something darted behind that same damn tree. All the blood drained from Alex's face. I felt a shiver run down my spine. I bolted up and stood next to my 2 friends. We were all pretty athletic and we knew how to fight, so not too much scared us. But something felt so wrong about that thing spying on us from behind that tree. It didn't feel like we were being watched by a person. It felt like we were being watched by an animal, a predator. "Hey, you creep! We can see you!" I shouted, hoping to draw out or scare off our stalker. "If you don't stop hiding right now, we're gonna come over there and dash." Just then, it stepped out from behind the oak tree. It looked like a grandma. Imagine the most stereotypical grandma you can think of. Frizzy hair, glasses, floral dress, hunched over a cane, the full combo. All 3 of us sighed in relief. It was just some poor old woman who'd gotten lost. She began to hobble over to us, and I began to think of how to apologize. After all, this poor little lady had probably been just as scared and confused as we were. But as she got closer, I started to feel weirded out again. She was hobbling over to us way too quickly, like she didn't even need her cane. It looked like she was faking the hobble too. She also wasn't as little as I thought. Very hunched, sure, but big and broad-shouldered like a linebacker. As she got closer, I could see that her hair looked like a wig, and that her glasses were actually just cheap sunglasses. "What the fuck?" Will muttered under his breath. In a matter of seconds, she'd covered half of the distance between us. All 3 of us started backing up, and then we started running. All of a sudden, she stood up straight, threw her cane down, and began to sprint. The thing charging at us was no grandma. It was a grown-ass man. He couldn't have been shorter than 6 feet 5 inches, and he looked like 300 pounds of pure muscle. His skin, if you could call it that, looked like it was made of shadows. It was black and gooey like tar and had wisps of black and red smoke coming off of it. But the scariest part of this guy wasn't his size, his speed, or his appearance. It was the elephant trunk of a dick sticking out from beneath his fake granny dress. Despite the literal log between his legs, he caught up to us in a single second. He knocked us all to the ground one by one, and then he spoke. "My name is Big Dick Randy," he yelled. "I want your booty and your candy." He then scooped our candy buckets off the ground with his left hand and demanded that we stand up and turn away from him. Me, Alex, and Will were so scared that we complied. Big Dick Randy then let out what I can only describe as a moan before slapping our booty cheeks so hard it felt like our booties were ripped off our bones. We fell to the sidewalk in agony. Another Randy booty slap like that, and we'd be completely cooked. But just then, the street was illuminated by a pair of headlights. Our Uber arrived just in time. "No," Randy yelled. "No more booty for tonight. But next year, haha, I'll get everyone's booty and candy. Everyone's. Ha 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 ha." Then the giant monster man sprinted down the street at full speed. Alex, Will, and I silently got up from the sidewalk and watched as Big Dick Randy vanished into the night, cackling all the way. Without saying a word, we got into the Uber. Our driver saw Randy too, judging from how pale his face was when we entered his SUV. "So, you still want to ride to the club, or?" he began. "Thanks, man. But can you just drop us off at DSU's front gates?" I replied. Of course," he quickly responded. "I think I'm gonna need the night off too after seeing that thing." When we were safely back on campus, we immediately went to the campus police to report what happened to us. Though they were concerned that someone was going around slapping booties, they assumed we'd just been pranked by another student and freaked out. To be fair, we all smelled like booze, sounded loopy, and looked completely out of it. We were in no state to be trusted by police who'd seen plenty of dazed and confused students like us on Halloween. We then tried calling our parents. Alex's parents accused him of being high, Will's parents accused him of being drunk, and my parents accused me of being both. In the end, Alex, Will, and I decided to just go to bed and see if we wake up with additional, sober insight the next morning. Though we did wake up sober, we didn't wake up with any revelations about what we saw, or any alternate explanations as to why our booty cheeks were sore. It's been many months since that fateful night, but we still remember Big Dick Randy's warning well. He's coming back this Halloween, and he's coming to slap everyone's booty and eat everyone's candy. However, to warn people about Randy's despicable plan, my friends and I took to Spotify to make a song about it. Look up our band name, Dig Bar, on Spotify and search for our song, Big Dick Randy. Listening to it might be the only way to stay safe this Halloween. Be ready to run and fight, because Big Dick Randy's coming back, and he's coming to slap all our backsides. Update: September 26th. It's 3 a.m. and someone's slamming on the door to my dorm right now. I don't know what to do. I called the cops and they said they'll be here soon, but I don't know how long that door will hold. Oh God, he must have found me. Story 2. Nobody does Halloween like they used to in the 90s. Growing up in that time period was the best for trick-or-treating. Finally, parents weren't all uptight thinking candy was going to have razor blades in it, and every kid I knew treated it like the kid version of Thanksgiving. We got candy for dressing up in crazy costumes. It's the perfect kid holiday. At least it was until 1999 when everything changed. That was the last year I trick-or-treated, and for good reason. You see, I grew up with a local group of kids in my neighborhood. We were all around the same age and always rode the bus together. That Halloween was a Sunday, which always sucked. The next day we would have to go to school, and usually our parents wouldn't let us out long. This year, however, we had the Monday off, so we were hitting the neighborhood hard. We had Eve planned to enter the old neighborhood down the street. The rumor was that since that neighborhood didn't have many kids, that they gave out king-size candy bars to those who ventured there. I don't know why that is always the prize for kids, but it was worth the 15-minute trek through the woods. On Halloween, we all met at my friend Billy's house. Since his house was at the top of the neighborhood, we had our route all mapped out. We would hit our neighborhood until 11 p.m., and then venture through the woods to get to the other neighborhood around 11:15 p.m. At that point, we would hit the 20 houses that awaited with the grand dream of king-size candy bars. Including me, there was Sarah, Ryan, and of course Billy. Of course, we were all getting to the age where girls were starting to pique our interest, but Sarah was really one of the boys. If one of us dare try to do anything with her, she would be the one to kick you in the balls and then probably spit on you. We never dared. She was one of us. One of the crew. Ryan was our resident daredevil. Always wanting us to do dangerous stuff. In fact, it was his idea to go the other neighborhood. One dare I wish we wouldn't have taken. So we started our predetermined route. It was a glorious haul so far. We each had a pillowcase about quarter-way filled. We had hit the final router to the mysterious neighborhood Ryan had told us about. The weird thing was, I started to not remember there ever being a neighborhood that close to us. I began to try and think hard, but being a kid, you don't ever really know much about the world around you outside of riding around with your family. Must have been something I had not seen before. I finally got sick of questioning about the neighborhood in my head and asked Ryan about it. Well, you see, this is a special neighborhood. It only pops up every 5 years or so. It's more of a festival of Halloween. My dad told me about it. He said when he was a kid, a few of his friends went out there to check it out. He said his friend came back with a huge bag of candy. But there is also something else. What do you mean something else? I asked. Well, apparently there is a legend about this place. My dad said one of his friends also went that night. He never returned. Ryan said as he ushered us forward on the trail. I don't know why I kept going after the revealing information. Something about the Halloween spirit and maybe a bit of Ryan always bullshitting us with stories from his dad. Whatever the reason, we all kept going down the trail. That is, until we started to see an orange glow began to emit from the seemingly dark woods. We began to follow the light, and as we got closer we could make out buildings. Soon we could see what looked like a small town. The buildings looked really old, but lanterns were strung everywhere, making the little dead town somehow come to life. Ryan, being the brave kid he was, ran to the first house. He bounced back to us with a grin on his face. He got 2 handfuls of some good candy. Come on, let's get more, Ryan blurted out as he ran to the next house. We all thought everything was good until we got to the first rundown shack of a house. We knocked on the door and a man opened. We all said trick or treat and he didn't say a word. He handed us handfuls of candy. The man seemed to be in a trance-like state. It was odd, but also finding a little shanty town in the woods was also strange. We went from house to house, where each house was home to one single person stuck in the trance-like state. We had one house left, but as we approached, we heard a scream. That scream was Ryan's. It was coming from the last house. And at that moment all the homeowners began to emerge from their homes with lanterns in tow. They brushed past us as if we didn't exist. The screams of Ryan got louder as the people entered the last home. At that moment we ran. We had to get someone to help. There was no way we could do anything against that many adults. We got to the neighborhood, but as we got to Ryan's house we could see something odd. The police had already arrived. Police tape surrounded the property, and as soon as we could get close our parents ran to us and hugged us. They told us that Ryan had ran into traffic coming out of the woods and was ran over. Some of us told what had happened to us, but our parents told us that the driver was arrested and we were trying to make up fantasies. The night everything happened, I reached into my candy bag to grab something to eat, when I found a flyer I hadn't noticed before. It read as followed. You were lucky to get a treat this Halloween. Next year you must come back. You might get a trick this time. I never hung out with our little group of friends again. I also never went back out for Halloween. No one ever believed us. I often think about going back, but every year someone on the road to my house dies. Now, no one trick-or-treats because of the cursed road. But only I and a few other kids growing up know what happened in the neighborhood in the woods. Stay safe, and whatever you do, don't go into the woods alone this Halloween. You too might find the neighborhood from hell. Story 3. I couldn't believe what treats my neighbor was giving to children on Halloween. It was late October when we finally hauled the last of our furniture into our new home. The house itself was nothing special. Brick walls, paned windows, and a slanted roof. The lawn was patchy and some of the paint was chipped. But it didn't really matter. Not at that price. As soon as we stepped out of the car, my son Henry's face scrunched up into an expression of angst. Why aren't the houses decorated, Mom? Don't people go trick-or-treating here? I gnawed at my lip, realizing he was right. There wasn't a single pumpkin, fuzzy spider, or lantern in sight. Each residence was orderly and well-kept, aside from clumps of golden leaves scattered about the driveways. "I'm sure they do," I told him in my most convincing voice. "Maybe it's just early still, but Halloween's 6 days away," he cried, clasping his hands. "Everyone's already put up decorations on our old street, even old Frank." Old Frank lived in our last neighborhood and was notorious for his aversion to Halloween decor. "Well, any kind of decor, really. I will not deface my property with plastic rubbish," he'd always say, whenever one of the neighbors gathered enough courage to approach him. "If you want your house looking like the devil's arse, that's fine by me, but don't touch a single blade of grass on my lawn and keep your kids away too." But despite his resolve, he'd always set out a small pumpkin on his porch with a few candy bars hidden inside. This year, he'd even scattered some bones around his lawn. Granted, they looked a lot like chicken leftovers, but we appreciated the gesture nonetheless. "Why did we have to move here?" Henry wailed, squirming in his seat. "I want to go home," I sighed. "You know why, Henry. We've been strapped for cash ever since the divorce and had no choice but to downgrade." Bristmore was a small village on the outskirts of the city. Normally, I wouldn't have considered moving so far from its comforts, but I couldn't resist the price. My job was remote either way, and relocating meant I'd be saving a huge part of my monthly income, so the arrangement seemed too good to be true. Maybe I should have known. "I'm sure you'll make plenty of friends here," I said with a smile. "I think I saw some children playing in the next house over last night. You want to go say hello?" Henry thought for a moment, clutching his red fire truck to his chest. "Yeah, okay." For a 6-year-old, my son was surprisingly assertive. He made friends easily and consorted with even the most reclusive individuals. Old Frank had come knocking on our door many times, complaining that Henry wouldn't stop peeking through his windows, but I knew he liked him all the same. He'd even taken him fishing once. "Can we ask them if they go trick-or-treating here?" he said, as we made our way up the steps leading to the whitewashed door of our neighbor's house. "We sure can," I replied, running my gaze over a pair of gardening shears sitting against the wall. No wonder the place was so immaculate. I was about to press the buzzer when the door flung open. "Well, hello!" A woman in her early 50s appeared in the doorway. Her hair was curled into a voluminous updo and set with copious amounts of hairspray. "You must be the Fosters. My name's Tabitha. We were all wondering when you would finally settle in. Robert assumed yesterday, but then we saw you lugging that armchair monstrosity across the yard. I told him to go help, but he's been staying with our Gus day and night. He's been feeling a bit under the weather these past couple of days. But then again, Robert's constant blabbering can't possibly be doing him any good." She roared with laughter at her own joke, before shifting her gaze to Henry. "What's your name, then?" she chirped, leaning down to examine him closer. "Henry," he replied, suddenly shy. "We came to ask about the decorations." I chuckled, my cheeks prickling. "We noticed that none of the houses had any Halloween decorations. Does the village not celebrate it?" The woman tilted her head, her lips curving into a thin smile. Halloween, don't you worry, we certainly do partake." "Of course," she trailed off, her long acrylic nails rapping against the door frame. "We have our own traditions here in Bristmore. They may be a bit outdated compared to what you folks are used to in the city, but they're near and dear to our hearts. Robert, come out of that room and meet the Fosters." "I see," I said, my eyes swiveling into the room behind her. So what do you do exactly? And what can we do to help?" "Oh," she waved her ringed finger. "This year the festivities are on us. Robert and I will take care of everything." She smiled with her teeth, revealing a gold-crowned molar in the back, as a bald man with a graying mustache pushed past her and stuck out his hand. "Robert," he said solemnly as I shook it. His eyes were red and puffy, and he was fidgeting with what looked like a crumpled tissue with his free hand. "I'm Allison, and this is—" I nodded toward Henry, but Robert was already heading back inside. "Oh, don't mind him." Tabitha rolled her eyes. "It's all because of our Gus. He turned 82 last month, And I keep telling Robert he's not going to be around forever, you know? But he just won't hear it. And you know what else? We nodded along patiently as Tabitha gave us the lowdown on each house in the neighborhood. Apparently, there were children in practically every home, and I squeezed Henry's hand in affirmation. Are there any kids in this house? Henry piped up as Tabitha rambled on about the baby born in number 11. Mom said she saw some playing in the yard the other day. Henry, I hissed, but felt relieved all the same. Kids always got away with asking questions adults couldn't. Oh, yes there are, Tabitha cooed. Our grandchildren come to visit every week. Claire is 7 now and Jimmy's 4. But they get along just fine. How old is your son? I'm 6, Henry announced, tugging at my hand. I knew standing around was exhausting for him, and truth be told, I wasn't too comfortable myself. Why hadn't Tabitha invited us inside? Was chatting at the front door yet another Bristmore custom? So, I interjected. Before we go, I wanted to ask if decorating our own house would be of any, inconvenience to you or the other neighbors. Henry and I like to carve pumpkins and dash. Oh, sure. Go ahead. Tabitha waved her hand dismissively. Decorations don't bother us, but I think you'll find that they leave much to be desired compared to ours. We trudged back down the steps in silence. Compared to theirs? I scanned the neighboring houses one more time in case I'd missed something. A stray paper bag twirled around in the wind, dancing gracefully amidst the leaves. What decorations! The neighborhood looked like old Frank's Haven. For God's sake. Not a single hint of spooky in sight. So, Henry and I set out to fix that, carving 5 pumpkins into the most horrendous expressions we could muster and setting them out proudly on our porch. We hung orange string lights on the railings and draped cobwebs over the bushes. Once we were finished, Henry started clamoring for the fog machine at the bottom of the box. But I didn't want to go all out just yet. Let's see how the neighbors react first, I said. Who knows? Maybe others will put up decorations once they see ours? They didn't. Not the next day and not the day after that. Before we knew it, it was October 31st. I mashed the buzzer and hit the door with my fist for good measure. I hadn't even considered what I was going to say. Hello. Did you give this to my son by accident? Or on purpose? I shook my head free of the troubling thought as I heard footsteps approaching the door from the other side. I don't know who it is. It's not for another half hour. I heard Tabitha's raspy voice. The door opened just a crack. Oh, Allison. How may I help? She looked different that night. Somehow, even more made up than the last time I had seen her. She was wearing a long sequin dress and red lipstick to match. Oh, I'm sorry, I muttered, caught off guard. My son. Henry brought this home. I attempted to slide the parcel out of my pocket with as little movement as possible. I'd placed it in 4 additional plastic bags before leaving the house, yet the smell had somehow become ingrained in my memory nonetheless. I held my breath as I passed it to her. Oh, she pursed her lips. Didn't he like it? I gawked at her, dumbfounded. Had I heard that correctly? I'm sorry, It's I stammered, bile rising in my throat once again. A kidney? Tabitha nodded, a faint smile on her face. Did he prefer something else? It was like I'd lost the ability to breathe, to think. This had to be an elaborate prank, right? This isn't funny, I whispered, handing out animal organs to children. Who do you think you are? Her amusement was unmatched. She studied me for a moment, before removing the chain and opening the door. It's not an animal organ, she sounded hurt. It's human, our own. Poor Gus sacrificed his life, and you dare complain. I felt the ground sliding from underneath my feet. My heartbeat roared in my ears and I tasted metal. Trying to catch my breath, I slumped down on the small bench beside the front door and buried my face in my hands. This was a dream. It had to be. I was going to wake up any minute now and... Here, drink this. Tabitha appeared next to me and held out a glass of clear liquid. It looked like water, but I couldn't be sure. She must have noticed my apprehension, because she lifted the glass to her lips and took a sip. See? Not poison. Hesitantly, I took it into my shaking hands and tried to take a sip, but my teeth kept clinking against the edge. Oh, Lord. Tabitha sighed as if it was somehow my fault. It'll be okay. Gus lived a good life, I promise. It was his time. I couldn't believe how casually she had said it. It was as though human sacrifice was an everyday occurrence, as simple as going to work or brushing one's teeth. Well, look, I can't stay with you all night, she said, towering over me. The show's about to begin and I haven't even started on the pit. I shut my eyes, willing myself to wake up, snap out of it, or do anything to put an end to the absolute nightmare I was experiencing at that moment. The pit, I repeated, my voice meek. What show? Tabitha threw her head back and roared with laughter. You can come watch if you like. I won't suggest you partake. This time around, since you seem so well, let's just say it's not for the faint of heart. Still, it's good you brought the kidney. The show can't go on without it. With that, she sauntered back into her house, leaving me to my own devices on the front porch. I sat, shaking like a leaf on the hard bench, wondering what on earth I was going to do now. I could call the police. Not that I had any proof. Tabitha seemed so calm and collected. What if the police were in on it too? No, that couldn't be. Was I losing my mind? Before I could explore that thought further, the front door flew open and Tabitha backtracked over the threshold, lugging what looked like a large wooden crate. She wasn't alone. Robert followed suit, holding up the other end of the elongated contraption. They trudged past me in silence, huffing under their breath. It's almost time, Tabitha grunted, lowering the crate onto the ground in the front yard. Get the bell! What's she doing here? Robert snarled, giving me the side eye. It's not time yet. Tabitha clicked her tongue. She's not got the backbone, Rob. Now get the darn bell before I remove yours too. Grumbling under his breath, Robert disappeared into the house and swiftly returned with a large handbell. Right? Tabitha snapped. Here we go. She raised the handbell over her head and rung her wrist 5 times. The sound echoed through the air, sending shrill vibrations into the night sky. Immediately, every porch was bathed in light. Doors flung open and dozens of people, big and small, clad in colorful costumes, started making their way towards the shrine in Tabitha and Robert's yard. There were clowns with big round noses, fairies with sparkling wings, vampires with red cloaks, and knights with silver swords. It was truly a sight to behold. The formerly desolate little village had transformed into one of mesmerizing beauty beyond my wildest dreams. The crowd of magical creatures swarmed the front yard, laughter penetrating the air. But before I could get my fill, Tabitha raised the bell and the chatter died down. Now, for our guest of honor, she bellowed, ringing the bell once. Our initiator and oldest member, please welcome Revenant Frank. The crowd dispersed, and a frail-looking man in a black cloak emerged from their midst. He approached the shrine and bowed, as hushed murmurs permeated the audience. Then he reached up and removed his hood, unveiling his face. It was old Frank. I gasped, immediately slapping my mouth shut with my hands. The last thing I needed was to be seen. Thank God the porch light wasn't on. I hugged my shawl tighter around my shoulders. Let's begin, old Frank croaked, raising his arms towards the sky. Bring your offerings. Let us celebrate Gus's prosperous life. A girl wearing a blue dress came forward. She couldn't have been any older than 4, but her expression was solemn and far too mature for a child her age. In her left hand, she held a plastic bag. She nodded to the revenant and set the bag down on the ground. Reaching into it, she pulled out. No, couldn't be. It was a severed head. I held my breath, trying not to gag. She clutched it, cupping its cheeks with her little hands as though it were no more than a porcelain doll. Some doll. I shuddered at my own comparison. I watched in horror as she placed the head down on the wooden crate, adjusting it by a tuft of its gray hair. Very good, old Frank mumbled, nodding towards the shrine. Who's next? One by one, each person presented their offering. Some brought fingers, others an organ or two, some even had teeth. Don't be shy. Slide them in. Tabitha cooed, prying Gus's mouth open. All must be in their place. Once all the offerings were deposited, old Frank circled the shrine, analyzing it carefully. Something is missing, he eventually said. Who hasn't come forward? No one spoke up. The crowd waited with bated breath. But the only confession was that of the whispering trees. Who didn't bring their offering? The revenant demanded. Speak up. A hubbub in the back of the crowd caught my attention. Someone was trying to make their way through. I didn't. A familiar voice chimed and my heart dropped. Henry. He was still in his pajamas, his face still blotchy and tear-stained. He hadn't even bothered doing up his shoelaces. What is your offering? Old Frank asked once he'd approached the front of the shrine. Henry sniffled. I don't know. My mom took it away. A gasp echoed through the audience, and I noticed the kidney was still on the ground next to me. I couldn't do it. I couldn't speak up. I couldn't let them know I was there. Your mom took it away? Old Frank seemed astounded. And where is she? My stomach lurched as dozens of eyes crawled past the shrine and up onto the porch where I was hiding. Could they see me in the darkness? Did they know I was there? Mom. Suddenly Henry was looking straight at me. Can I have the offering? I didn't know what to do. Fear sizzled through me like electricity as I tried to regain control of my body. Slowly, I moved one arm, then another, then my legs, willing myself to stand up and pick up the wretched parcel off of the floor. The crowd watched in silence. It was as though the entire world had stopped turning, waiting for me to compose myself. With trembling hands, I scooped the offering off of the ground. The smell was just as strong, only now I was stronger. One step at a time, I dragged my feet along the porch and down the wooden stairs. Everyone was waiting. Thank you, Henry whispered, as I passed the parcel to him, nearly dropping it as I did so. He retracted the plastic bags one by one, his expression remaining unchanged even as he reached the core. I watched as my 6-year-old son placed the final offering onto the shrine and the crowd cheered. Very good, old Frank mumbled. Now for the ceremony. The ceremony? What ceremony? But before I had a chance to ask, the shrine burst into a myriad of golden flames. The blaze reached towards the sky, wisps of smoke twirling in the cold air. All around me, clowns danced with fairies, knights waltzed with vampires, all to the beat of an invisible drum. Henry was standing next to old Frank, clutching his hand, the stench from the bonfire enveloping the neighborhood. Everything went black. Hashtag. When I awoke, the sun was already high in the sky. I was in my own bed, although I didn't immediately recognize my surroundings. The previous night seemed like it had only been a lifelike nightmare, a product of my own weary mind. Throwing the covers to the side, I slid out of bed and looked out the window. The crowd was gone and the shrine was nowhere to be seen. The fog had lifted too, and the street suddenly seemed pleasant and inviting. Henry, I called, stepping into the corridor. Are you awake? But there was no answer. A note sat on the kitchen table. It read, I am having breakfast at Tabitha's. Panic-stricken, I crumpled it up and headed out the front door. What was he doing there, for God's sake? Oh, good, you're here. Tabitha smiled at me, a strange twinkle in her eyes. Henry's just having his breakfast. Come in, come in. We have much to discuss. I wanted to tell her there wasn't anything that I'd possibly be interested in hearing, but kept my mouth shut, instead following her into the kitchen. My son was sitting at the table in the middle of the room, scooping fried eggs onto his plate. Henry, I said, my voice pleading, let's go home. We're moving back to the city. Tabitha snorted. Oh, no you're not. You're part of the initiation now. I gaped at her. What? Initiation? She pursed her lips. Were you not present last night? And then, as if through a painful haze, the memories came flooding back. The shrine, the stench, old Frank. I grit my teeth, not wanting to remember, willing them not to be true, but Tabitha was already speaking. We have a yearly rotation system. Every household must volunteer one member of their family, be it the youngest and the most helpless, or the oldest and most experienced. It doesn't matter to Revenant Frank. He's been sacrificed a total of 3 times now, and he keeps coming back stronger every time. Not something anyone else has been able to replicate. I stared at her, wondering which one of us was closer to losing our minds. Old Frank had come back to life 3 times? All this time I thought they were mispronouncing the word reverend, or perhaps it was meant as a term of, well, endearment, something to enhance the spirit of Halloween. Now, if you don't perform your duties as a household, you will automatically, no questions asked, be assigned the main role in the next initiation. We have eyes everywhere. She cackled as if the apparent terror on my face were the funniest thing in the world. And of course, the ceremony will continue until there's no one left. Henry chimed in and my mouth fell open. What had they done to my son? I needed time to think, to come up with a plan. How had things suddenly gone so wrong? So who decides which household's turn it is? I whispered, my throat closing up. Oh, we always go clockwise. She snickered, patting my shoulder. It's your turn next year.